Today, the Supreme Court heard arguments in the case for Mississippi that also could affect voters in 13 other states and the District of Columbia, which have grace periods for ballots cast by mail. And it's additional 15 states that have more forgiving deadlines for ballots from military and overseas voters also could be affected. And a ruling that is expected in late July by the Supreme Court, which is right before the midterm elections. Want to bring in our chief legal analyst, Khalif Rhodes, now to break down a little bit more about what the Supreme Court is really being asked to decide here.
This is a deep question, tough question. There were fireworks in this hearing, so let me start with that, Brian. Absolute fireworks. So you know the sides that folks have made the arguments on. You got Jackson, Kagan, Sotomayor that are ruling and or tipping their hat to the way they would rule towards allowing Mississippi to keep this in place. Then you have Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas that have clearly made their bones about not wanting to allow Mississippi to do this. The swing vote, the one that's undecided, is Barrett. She asked some pivotal questions today, and she really never tipped her hat. She had concerns with both sides, skeptical of Mississippi's finality of mail-in ballots, also skeptical and unconvinced that Congress had clearly preempted states from doing this. And then we really didn't hear anything from our Chief Justice. And so we got two folks that are kind of undecided. So what's the argument here? What is the issue? Mississippi's Solicitor General Stewart argues that this is not about elections. This is about federalism. In 1845, Congress decided that all elections would have to be done on the specific day. What he's
Election
day. What he's saying is that if Congress has not specifically outlined that any post-election date ballot receipts cannot occur, then it's something that the states have to be able to decide. That's clear authority that if the federal government does not outline it, that a state now has to go and do it. So I think that his argument makes sense. Does he have any buyers? We'll have to see.
Where do North and South Carolina fall in this?
They'll be in one of those 13 plus states that have similar rulings. There's also 17 plus states that allow it for military or overseas voters. And so both of our states, South Carolina and North Carolina, will fall into one of those 30 plus states that will be affected by this outcome.
And if the Supreme Court were to strike down this grace period come this summer, when would that go into effect?
Instantly. So if the Supreme Court does something like this, and that was contemplated during oral arguments today, that there's not enough time for something like this to be implemented, and the justices all came back and said, well, if this decision is made in July, there will be enough time for it to be implemented and to take effect in states before the next upcoming election. There were a number of key quotes that I got from in here today, Brian, but I think one of the best from Mississippi Solicitor General, he notes that the U.S. Department of Justice has made the need to stop fraud central to its support for the GOP argument. But he says they have cited not one single example of fraud from post-election day ballot receipts. He's saying if you're telling us that the reason and the rationale that we should not have this in place is because there's some widespread fraud, point to one case. He struggled in the beginning of his argument, but there during his closing was probably his best portion of the day because he was getting hammered the whole time by Alito and Thomas.
All right. That is going to be interesting to see if they do strike it down. It's going to create a lot of confusion in election leading up to the midterm election. There's a lot of busy extra work for them to get the word out for the election offices across many states. Right?
100%. But I think they're contemplating that argument that could be made about it not being enough time, about it being confusing. I don't think any justice is buying that.
All right. Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes, thanks.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.